Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our September Progressive Roundtable. My name is Andrea Miller. I am the Executive Director of People Demanding Action. So thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Today we're going to be looking at a number of different issues. There is an election coming up. I don't think anybody in the U.S. has managed to miss that. So we're going to be talking about some voting issues, and we're going to be talking about the voter suppression side, the Let Me Vote, and we're also going to be talking about the Count My Vote. There was also another murder. There have been several this week of Black people that were murdered by the police. We are going to have another mother from Every Case Matter helping make this personal so that we understand the people that we are talking about have family members. They are loved by other people. They are people, they are not things, they are not statistics. We're also going to be joined by Mike Darner, who will give us an update on the Progressive Caucus budget. Here on Capitol Hill right now, the Senate is currently deliberating, and very shortly they will be voting on SJ Res 39, the decision as to whether or not we will sell the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia another $1.15 billion in weapons so they can continue terrorizing the citizens of Yemen. So again, we are going to be very broad in what we cover today. We are also going to be joined by the head of our sister organization, Donna Smith, from Progressive Democrats of America. We are going to have a petition delivery, so many of you sign the petitions that we send, so thank you all very, very much. We have Emily Worth here from Food and Water Watch. They did a tremendous job helping to put together the background for the Water Act. And with that, I'm going to bring up our very, very, very dear friend who joins us nearly every month, Jasmine Jefferson, who will update us on what's going on with Social Security. And last month, we didn't have a roundtable last month because Congress wasn't in session, but on August 16th, Social Security, everybody's favorite program, turned 81 years young. So, Jasmine, come on down.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me back as always. I consider you all dear friends as well. It's always my pleasure to come see PDA. But, well, I'll start with the birthday party since Andrea opened up with birthday parties. PDA, along with Social Security Works, and I feel like there's someone else and I can't remember who it is. Had some birthday parties this summer and are continuously having birthday parties throughout the year to celebrate Social Security's 81st birthday. They've been extremely successful in the past, and so we're really happy that we have that continuing partnership and that will continue into year 82, 83, and into the future as we continue to celebrate this incredible system that we have built. So I'm actually going to not talk about birthday parties, though. I can talk a little bit about what the Congress is doing right now with the budget process. The Social Security Administration is part of that budget process, and so I'm going to talk a little about that and how that works. So there are two ways that I think you can kind of dismantle Social Security if that was your goal. So one, you can do benefit cuts. So clearly there are people who depend on Social Security and its benefits. So if we lower the benefits, we're starting to dismantle the program. The other way to do that is to try to defund the Social Security Administration, because just by nature, if you want to say that the government is broken, we can defund defund it so that it doesn't operate very efficiently and effectively. And then, well, now we look at all the problems that are happening at SSA because of these budget cuts. And so, by nature, the Republicans in the House have decided to continue their tradition of trying to underfund the Social Security Administration going into this budget season. And so you'll see from the Appropriations Committee in the House, they are around $2 billion under where SSA needs to be. The Senate was a little closer to what the appropriate funding amount would be, but either way, what we're going to see is probably a continuing resolution. What that means is that SSA will be sacrificing something because they cannot, by nature, operate under the same exact costs that they had last year, just solely because of inflation alone, and because over the past 6 years or so, the Republicans have underfunded SSA every single time that they've tried to, well, I don't know when's the last time they passed a real budget, but whenever that was, and many, many moons ago, they've continuously underfunded SSA. So you've seen furloughs, you've seen they've had to lay off a lot of workers. Their hours have decreased drastically. You have offices that have had to close. They closed 64 offices in the past around 6 years or so. And so moving forward, the CR is not the most ideal situation. It's not horrible. But our goal is always to pass actually what the president asked for, which was about $13 billion. And so in the next few days, while they are still in town, while the Senate is still in town, while the House is still in town, we would encourage you to reach out to your members of Congress to encourage them, because they can make changes to their CR. So there are things called anomalies where they can go in and say, well, we're going to decide that we're going to give them a little more money because we want to, really just because they want to, not for any other reason. If they want to fund something, they will find a way to fund it. And so going back to your members in the House and then your senators as well, and saying, well, we want to make sure that SSA is funded fully, not only because that's the best thing to do, but because you paid for the benefit. SSA is self-funded. Every time you pay the 6.2% out of your paycheck, it goes into the Social Security Trust Funds. Just like your benefit money comes out of those trust funds, that's where the money to administer the program comes from as well. There's no money somewhere else that Congress is trying to go get to make sure that SSA is funded. That's actually your money. It's self-funded. You funded it. Congress just has the final. Yeah, they technically have the final say. They say they have the final say, I'll say, over how much money SSA receives going into each budget cycle. So again, I would advise you heavily to go back and say, well, I think out of my money, we can have the $13 billion that the president requested. So that's something that's really important to us currently and moving forward as well, that we continue to fund SSA at the level that's necessary for it to be administered fully. And the only other thing I wanted to highlight is a new expansion bill that came out over the past few weeks or so. It's HR 5952. It's called the Strengthening Social Security Act, and that was introduced in the House by Representatives Sanchez and Representative Honda, both from California. Their bill is currently the most expansive Social Security bill in the Congress because it's not introduced in the Senate. So what it does is it increases benefits. It changes from using the CPIE, what we call the CPIE, so the CPI for elderly, and more accurately calculates benefits for Social Security beneficiaries. It also has a really cool provision, or I think it's really cool, that changes how widows' benefits are calculated. Currently, if a widow, so say someone's married, they both receive Social Security benefits. If one of the spouses were to pass, then the spouse has to choose which benefit they want to take. You would assume the higher the two. But if you were already living at a level that was depending on those two incomes, so say your housing was you depended on both of those checks to maintain your house, for example. when you lose that income, now you're starting to think about, well, maybe I have to change where I'm living, or I have to change how I'm eating, or how, I don't know, how I'm giving to my grandkids at Christmas, just anything like that. This bill would do something, it changes the formula, so you can actually take 75% of the joint benefit, which is an incredible improvement and would really help widows, especially women, because we typically outlive our male partners. So that's really important. That's a wonderful piece of legislation. I believe it has like 46 or so co-sponsors, and so calling for more members to be a part of that would be really, really helpful. Continue to strengthen the drumbeat toward expansion, which we know is growing and strengthening, and that we've seen in the presidential election is a huge part of conversation. We hope to see it happen in the debate, because if we talk about Social Security, one candidate has a very great stance, one candidate has an interesting stance that could, and well, he flip-flops a lot, so we don't know what Mr. Trump's going to decide, but I have a feeling that based on who he surrounds himself with, he would cut Social Security if we had the opportunity to do it, despite what he says currently. So, again, that's something to think about going into the election cycle, and I will answer the question that I think you have.
Okay, well, after you said the word cut, it kind of took it to another level. But if Social Security is self-funding, as you say, and you have a president asking for $13 billion, well, suppose they say, well, we only want to approve $10 billion. But say, for instance, there's really $25 billion in there. I'm thinking, what happens to that extra money? Are they freezing it? Are they redirecting it?
It's in a trust fund. It's in a trust fund.
They can't touch it.
They can't touch it. It's in
I mean, I know
part of the trust
people
fund.
talk about other people's money. So I don't want somebody using our money.
They cannot use that money for anything else. Like, the money that's in the Social Security Trust Fund is solely dedicated to Social Security. They cannot use it for anything except your benefits or administering your benefits.
So when we have a presidential candidate talking about proposing to cut, what do you mean cut?
So cutting could mean several things. You could literally pass legislation that says, well, we're going to lower benefits by changing those formulas. For example, there's a formula that comes up with benefits. You could do something that's a little more stealthy, like raising the retirement age. That is a benefit cut. You could change, I don't think anyone would do this, but they could change the payroll tax and lower it and say we're going to, maybe it's going to be fixed now instead of 6.2% of your income. So there are several different ways to cut Social Security in a not so sneaky way, and then also in some very stealth ways, like changing also the change CPI. That was a benefit cut. So changing that's how you calculate benefits and cost of living adjustments. So yes.
Yes, Justin, have you guys done any estimate on how much money would really adequately fund Social Security? Because you're right, I mean, it took me a month to get an appointment with my local Social Security office. They were very, very good, but, you know, you have to be patient.
Yeah, I thank you for your question, because I forgot to say one thing. We actually just did these reports. Our research director, Stephanie, worked really hard on reports about how SSA money affects each state. And so if you go to our website, which is socialsecurityworks.org, you can see all of those reports to see exactly how Social Security money is benefiting each state. And I don't know if she did district stuff, but I have a feeling that she did do district stuff. But they are, much like our state reports that we issue around Social Security's birthday, they would give you a good sense of what it means to really fund SSA fully. We believe you can expand the benefit, consistent with our message. You could expand SSA's capabilities. Yes.
Yeah, Jasmine, what's the status of the change in the COLA?
Oh, that's funny. I was just at a hearing, a Ways and Means hearing. They had it was a Social Security subcommittee hearing on solvency, and they had the CBO director and actuary Steve Goss from SSA. He says that Steve Goss is who I'm quoting, he said he estimates that the cost of living adjustment will be about 0.4%, which is quite tiny. If you all are familiar with the subject, the cost of living adjustment in the past few years has been zero. And I don't believe anyone's costs have gone down at all. I would bet that they've probably increased. And Yes, and that's something we're
Yeah.
working on in particular is prescription drug costs. We're currently working. There's a hearing at 2 o'clock on that even. So, but that's something Social Security Works is very heavily involved in getting into drug prices and making sure that we can lower those drug prices because there's no reason that drug prices are so high.
I also was including in my question, not just the amount of the COLA, but how the COLA is calculated. Whether or not it will include things like drug prices.
Oh, good question. Go ahead.
I just learned about that last night from Alex Lawson, which is
Yeah, that's
their.
my boss.
Yeah, I know, right? I got to see both of you within 2 days, because we were on the Tom Hartman show.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, so we had a long talk in the green room, and he said that there is a wonderful move to make the COLA equate to the rise and fall of medical costs.
Yes.
Instead of energy and some of these other things that for senior citizens, it's not as crucial as what the medical costs
Yes.
are, medicine.
Now, I don't want to steal Eric's Furlan.
Oh,
to talk
okay.
about this?
Eric is coming, but he's not speaking on Hold on.
Okay, so there's a potential piece of legislation, and it would, like you said, equate the cost of living adjustment to medical inflation, because it would highlight how high medical inflation is in the United States. That is true. If it were to be a piece of legislation, it would be called Happy COLA, which is a wonderful name, but it's helping Americans protect and preserve their yearly cost of living adjustment. So it has a real meaning as well. It's not just happy. It's quite a mouthful. So yes, that does exist, and hopefully it will be introduced before everyone gets out of town. But I don't hold up, I know Mike is here and probably would like to get some time in. But thank you all, I appreciate it.
Thank you, I want to bring Mike Darner down, the Executive Director of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, to continue talking about what is going on. While we don't have a budget, we do have a budget process. It's a little broken right now, but it does exist and things are happening. So Mike, come on down.
Great, full feedback. So Andrea, thank you so much for having me. Good to see everyone. Good to see my friends from Social Security Works here. I'll put a pitch in for something that we're working on together. Right now, Congressman Pocan, on behalf of the Progressive Caucus, is circulating a letter up here on the Hill where we're going to encourage the president to take some bold executive action on drug price affordability. There are a lot of things that the Progressive Caucus is supporting in our budget, like allowing Medicare to negotiate lower prescription drug prices, importation from Canada and other foreign countries, but we think there's a lot that the president can do through the NIH, through a variety of things that there's already statutory authority for him to sort of act on these things. So we want to inject that into the discussion, and we appreciate both People Demanding Action and Social Security Works for endorsing that effort. So in terms of what's happening up here on the Hill right now, the progressives are focused on we need to make sure that we fund the government, to keep the government open for the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th. So progressives are focused on making sure that we get a good deal that doesn't include any bad policy riders that might block some of the important things that President Obama's done in his last year in office. It's a big priority for the progressives that we get robust funding to combat the Zika crisis for the NIH and the CDC. That's looking pretty good right now. But there are a couple of other things that are hanging out there, one of which is to make sure that Flint, Michigan gets funding for the poisoning of the water system there. There's something the Progressive Caucus, we just wrote a letter to Speaker Ryan asking him to make sure that language is included in the bill that will be voted on this week or next week. We're going to keep pushing on that. So once we get beyond that, though, I think at some point a deal will happen. Members will leave, they will go do their elections. We'll come back in November, we'll have what's called a lame duck session. There will be some very important fights the progressives will be talking about. We know our friends in the progressive community will have our backs. At the top of the list is the potential vote on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That is something that the Obama administration, folks in industry are very focused on and are very committed to. On the outside, the Progressive Caucus has been leading the fight here in Congress to oppose that deal and oppose a vote in the lame duck. Rosa DeLauro from Connecticut is our champion on that. She has been whipping progressives, whipping Democrats, talking to Republicans across the aisle. There's a significant number of Republicans who have concerns about the Trans-Pacific Partnership because it would undermine American sovereignty, would impact prescription drug affordability, and so we're working with those unlikely allies across the aisle, and we hope and we think we will prevail at that time. And then, we'll have an election in November, we'll have a new Congress in January, and that's where the Progressive Caucus will again be focusing on our Progressive Caucus budget alternative, the People's Budget that we put out every year. This is a big, bold document full of the ideas that have been demanded by the American people to address this wage stagnation, the rising costs of healthcare, housing, education. And the Progressive Caucus really is the main force in Congress for putting forth a bold vision that would tangibly improve people's lives and address some of those real economic concerns that I think they're being highlighted during this presidential debate. We of course want everybody in the progressive community, everybody in this room, everybody watching today to contribute to that process. So in the near future, we'll be launching a website where people can upload their ideas for things they'd like to see us include in terms of spending priorities, in terms of raising revenues in the Progressive Caucus budget. We would encourage groups to hold town halls and briefings and sort of educate your membership about what the Progressive Caucus budget is. Our members are always willing to come and talk to local folks in their community about the Progressive Caucus budget. Our door is open for those types of conversations because we know the more people who learn about the Progressive Caucus budget, who understand it's a real policy document with real ideas, it really helps us sort of just broaden the debate up here in Congress. One of the ideas was in the Progressive Caucus budget 2 years ago. We put in a program called Debt-Free College. And at that time, Debt-Free College was not something that was a part of the national debate. It was considered sort of too big an idea. So, we were just talking about, how can we keep interest rates low for people who have existing student debt? We didn't have a big, bold plan as Democrats and progressives for what we could do in the future in an alternative world. And as a result of that, we got 96 members to vote for the budget that included Debt-Free College. The Progressive Caucus co-chairs introduced a resolution along with Senator Schatz and Warren and Schumer in the Senate. We have now over 80 bipartisan co-sponsors of that resolution. Secretary Clinton and Senator Sanders both championed bold affordability proposals and came together to create one plan that includes a debt-free promise, and also the promise of tuition-free education for folks who make under $125,000. So we think it's a great example of we can make real progress just by putting these big popular ideas out there, organizing together, getting members of Congress to push these things in their communities, and we can impact the national debate. So we think there are lots of opportunities to do that in the future. We want you to be a part of it. So feel free to reach out to us. Just all you need to do is Google Congressional Progressive Caucus. Our website will pop up. My contact information is on the website. So look forward to hearing from all of you. And thank you again for all you do to support the CPC.
Question? Do you have a moment, Michael? Oh, Stephen?
Yeah, good to see you here,
Hey,
Mike.
good to see you, buddy.
On the TPP, my member of Congress, and I'm assuming others, would prefer not to have to vote on the TPP. Is there any chance that pressure can be put on the president to say, look, you may lose this. This would be a humiliating defeat at the end of your administration. Don't submit it in Linda.
So, this is a priority for the president, and the president, I think, is going to do whatever he he used to do. But I do think, there are folks in leadership who are having conversations, especially on the Republican side. Senator McConnell, Speaker Ryan has said things to the extent that they think the votes aren't there right now. And I think there's a political argument to be made that why, if the votes aren't there, they may not want to put their members through such a polarizing vote, which would be really unpopular, back home. Again, with the presidential campaign, we've seen the trade is a galvanizing issue. It speaks to the economic uncertainty that people are feeling in their lives. And for a lot of, especially folks on the Republican side, they have to take that vote, they're going to be very vulnerable, from challenges in the future based on that vote. So they may want to avoid it.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Mike, thank you for all your hard work.
Yes.
Thank you for all you do.
I know, thank you very much. I want to bring up our next guest. She is new to the round table. She is Beverly Smith, and Beverly was born and raised in Washington, D.C., so she is a D.C. resident, and I know you are for statehood. She's also a retired federal employee. She had 2 children, and Alonzo was her only son. She also has a 37-year-old daughter. Since her son's murder, she has become an activist against police brutality. She is one of the leaders of the Coalition of Concerned Mothers, and she also founded the Circle of Love and Support. So COLA's, again, another meaning, a grief healing support group for survivors of police brutality, gun violence, and people grieving over the loss of a loved one. So, Beverly, please come up and talk to us about your son and your work. Come on down.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Again, my name is Beverly Smith, and I'm with Every Case Matters. And the reason why we're called Every Case Matters is because we're trying to change the trajectory of just 1 or 2 cases, the high-profile cases, the names that we all know, such as Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, to every case of police brutality, because truly every case does matter. My son, Alonzo Smith, was 27 years old. He was an assistant school teacher at Acatink Academy in Springfield, Virginia. He was also a father of a 6-year-old son. He was also a published author of a book of poems. He also was very, very handsome, and he knew it. And he was a portrait model, so he was very proud of that. Alonzo also was returning back to college this past January to finish his degree in social work. He went to Morgan State University and completed 2 years there. Alonzo also enjoyed playing flag football with the team at Acatink Academy. And, he worked for kids with behavior problems and learning disabilities. And the faculty said that he indeed was a master of his trade. Tragically, on November the 1st of last year, my son Alonzo was seen running and heard yelling, "Help, help, they're trying to kill me," at the Marlborough Plaza apartment complex on Good Hope Road, Southeast. Several residents called 911. It was an assault in progress. That assault was on my son, Alonzo. When 2 Metropolitan police officers arrived on the scene, they found my son, Alonzo Smith, lying face down, handcuffed. He was not breathing. He was dead at that time. The Metropolitan Police asked the special police officers, "Do you know him?" They said no. They said, "What happened?" They responded, "Oh, he's running around like he was on PCP." instead of turning my son over to see if he's breathing, they proceeded to go back to their patrol car, get more restraints, put the restraints on my son's ankle, turned him over. Mind you, my son's head was dangling off the stairway. Metropolitan Police proceeded to try to resuscitate my son by performing CPR incorrectly with his head still dangling off the stairway. This can be seen on YouTube. Our mayor had released the first body cam of Metropolitan Police last November. To date, and also want to add that my son was not armed. My son did not commit a crime. Metropolitan Police, the U.S. Attorney General Office, to this date, refuse to release the names of the 2 special police officers that is responsible for my son's death. My son's case went to the grand jury last December. Again, to date, I have not heard anything or any progress on my son's case. I don't even know if his case, if the grand jury has even intervened at this time. I also want to add that my son, again, did not commit a crime, but yet the mayor, 3 days after my son was murdered, she did a press conference on television, and she stated that my son's death was a justifiable homicide. How in the world could it be a justified homicide and there has not been any type of investigation on my son's case? I spoke up, my attorney spoke up. The following day she came back and did another press conference and said, oh, it was an error. It's now a death investigation. How can you make an error in your position like that? You just don't make errors like that. But again, they thought my son was just another black male and we just gonna sweep this under the rug, but they did not know who Alonzo's mother was. Now they do. Now they know who Alonzo's mother was, because I'm gonna fight for my son's justice until my last breath. I was blessed to have an organization, Pan-African Community Action. There's a couple of members here today who raise your hand. They have just been phenomenal as my son, Justice for Zoe campaign organizers. And we have 5 demands for justice for my son. The first one is identify and charge the private police force and officers involved in killing of Alonzo Smith. Number 2, full disclosure of what happened that night to Alonzo Smith. Number 3, make laws and policies around private special police officers transparent. Number 4, the United Nations or organizations of American states conduct an investigation into Alonzo's death and DC police lack of transparency in this case. Number 5, community control of the police. I think it's very necessary for these cases that has no indictment whatsoever. We blatantly see that they were murdered by DC, Maryland, Virginia police officer needs to be taken to the United Nations. Because as you can see, we're not getting any results here. They are committing these murders with impunity. And it is not right, and it has to stop. And these cases eventually will be going to the United Nations. And why? Because we charge the United States with genocide. Because that is what it is. Each and every one of us in here know that there is a disproportionate rate of African descent, men, women, and children who are being murdered by police officers, and they are not being held accountable. Again, this has to stop. This cannot continue to go on in our country. While our country, in other countries, charging them for human rights violations, and we have human rights violations right here in our own country, and we're not doing anything about it. It has to stop. Another thing that I've noticed, I've been doing a lot of studying on the grand jury process because I could not understand why all of these cases are coming back with a non-indictment in these police brutality case. And what I've learned and come to understand that there is a process called ex parte proceedings. Now a lot of you in here know what that is. You know, these proceedings are one-sided. There is no defense. So why isn't there an indictment? I tried to figure out. And then I learned that the reason being is because the prosecuting attorney in these cases have total discretion over the evidence. And I know you all have heard that old saying, it's easy to get to indict a ham sandwich. We all know that. So if the prosecuting attorney who have discretion over the evidence has total control, again, total control over the grand jury. If he or she won an indictment, it's easy to get. All they have to do is present the evidence that is going to return an indictment. And then if they don't want an indictment, the only thing they have to do is not submit the evidence that they already have, that they know is going to return an indictment. So see, our ex parte proceeding needs an overhaul. It needs to end. Because this is one of the main reasons why we're not getting indictments in this country. And also, the police department is an agency of the U.S. Attorney General Office. So therefore, they are inherently a conflict of interest. That's just like you or me trying to indict our parents. It's not fair. We have a systemic racial judiciary system in the United States. It is broken. No, it does not need to be reformed. We need a new one, and we need it now. We need it right now. Our fifth demand is community control over the police. And what I mean by community control over police, I'm not talking about a review board, which is already in place in some states. When we say community control over the police, what we mean is that the community are involved. They are the board members. We make a decision on the budget of the police officer, how it is spent, who's hired, who's fired. These are the type of decisions that the members or the board of community control over police, that's the difference from a review board. Review board may make suggestions. Community control over police actually make decisions. And for further information on what community control over police will look like, you may go to my website, my organization, Pan-African Community Action, at PACADMV.org. Again, that's PACADMV.org. We also currently have a Justice for Zoe Fund. And if you're interested in contributing to the Justice for Zoe Fund, the Justice for Zoe Fund is a GoFundMe account. And you simply, all you have to do is just click in Justice for Zoe Fund. And we will appreciate any contributions that you can make towards the Justice for Zoe campaign, because it is also needed. We have to hire investigators, we still have attorneys to pay. We're doing a lot on the ground and trying to get justice for my son, because it is just unfair. It's just unfair, and at times it just gets unbearable. It's already trauma for me that my son has been murdered. But then I don't even know the names of the special police officers who's involved in his murder. In the United States, this should not be. But unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this is the country that we live in. I'm gonna say it again. We have a systemic racial judiciary system that needs to be changed. And the only way that it's going to be changed has to be changed through laws passed. There is a proposed law that's called URLIA, and URLIA stands for Uniform Reporting Law Enforcement Act. And to find out more about URLIA, you can go to changeisonus.org. With the URLIA bill, it encompasses everything in regards to police brutality and also special police officers alike. And I'm gonna give you only a couple for example. It imposes upon law enforcement agents an obligation to preserve life and prevent injury during policing. Hands over control of the entire investigative process following an officer-involved killing to an independent investigative team selected by the family from the state website. Empowers the independent investigative team, not public prosecutor, with the responsibility of presenting evidence to public to grand jury. And these are some of the items that URLIA is proposing for the URLIA bill. But the problem that we have right now is we cannot get anyone at this time from Congress to help sponsor this bill, which is needed so much. This bill right here in place would definitely change what it looks like now with police brutality, with police murdering unarmed individuals with impunity. I would like to say thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Thank you.